All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's Portals Community Call. I'm Jason Gumpert from MS Dynamics World. And as always, I'm really pleased to be here and help host this monthly event. This month, we actually have a couple of really awesome co-presenters, and I'll let them introduce themselves momentarily here. As we begin, please know that we do welcome your questions anytime throughout the event. Just look for the Q&A or the questions block in the webcast interface. Ask them. I know Nick will, and all of our presenters will be keeping an eye on that as we go. We're also recording today's event. We'll be sharing that with all of you after the session ends. With that, I think we're ready to begin. Nick, why don't I hand things over to you to get us started?
Sounds good. Thank you, Jason. Let's get started. We got two great presentations coming up, so I'm going to kind of get through the upfront here stuff real quick, and then we'll get to the meat of the meal. So, quick introduction. My name is Nicholas Hayduk. If this is your first call joining us, I am a software engineer with Engineered Code Consulting Inc., based in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. If we're not already connected on LinkedIn, please feel free to do that. We've also got our Twitter or X account, our blog that we produce every month. We've got our YouTube channel where we post these recordings as well as our weekly tips. As well as if you're into podcasts, you can check out serum.audio where we have our Refresh the Cache podcast. We had a new episode, I think, come out last week. We've got a couple more recorded and should be out relatively soon. So looking to keep that active as well. Thank you, as always, to Jason and the team at MS Dynamics World for their support, encouragement, facilitation, all that sort of stuff for keeping these events going every month. Very much appreciated, and looking forward to keeping the momentum going. In terms of our agenda, same as always. We got just a small little bit of portal news. We'll get right into our two guest presenters today, and then we'll finish off with some with the date and time of our next call. And if there's time, we'll get into some Q&A as well. As Jason mentioned throughout the presentation, if you do have any questions for any of the presenters, please throw that into the questions area, and we will do our best to get to that. So in terms of Portals news, not a whole lot going on this month. I've got two things. So the quick one is the card gallery, which was in preview for a while, is now generally available. I know that Microsoft was using that internally for some of their, I think it was the new events template that they've been working on. So they've added a few new features to the card gallery to make that a little bit more polished, and so now it is generally available. And the other one, the kind of the bigger news, was the Actions pane in VS Code for Desktop. So if you are a VS Code for Desktop user and you've got the Power Platform tools in there, you'll get some new features that let you do things like preview the website directly from VS Code for Desktop. You can list all of your websites. You can upload, download. So a lot of the things that you can do through the CLI, you can do now through the UI, through the GUI of the Actions pane in VS Code for Desktop, as well as I think that the big one that people are going to love is that preview functionality. So rather than having, if you kind of do all of your work in VS Code for Desktop, but you needed the preview functionality in the Power Pages Design Studio to clear the cache, now you don't need to have that tab open. You can just do that directly from VS Code for Desktop. So yeah, that's a great advancement for the developer folks. So those are the two kind of new things that have been announced from the product team in the last month or so. All right, I see no questions about that, so we are going to dive right into our first guest presenter. So our first guest presenter is Alexandre Mees. He reached out a little while ago. I think it was on LinkedIn where we connected, and he mentioned that he had built a custom Power Pages Min app with Power Apps, and I thought, man, that sounds really cool. I'd love to see a demo of that, and I think that the community would love to see a demo of that. So, no further ado, Alexandra, I guess, Jason, do we switch the presenter here? Let me see. I can do that. I think
Yeah,
probably make
yeah, you
presenter.
can do
There
it
we
if you want.
go. And Alexandre, take it away.
Yep, thank you, Nicholas. I appreciate the opportunity to present. Let me go ahead and share my screen and get ready here. Um, Hi, my name is Alexandre Mees, or Alex, and I've started my own company about a year ago. I'd consider myself a Power Platform early adopter. When Power BI came in 2015, I started using it. Then I started making apps and Power Apps in 2019. One of those apps was a timer application used for billing for client services, for billing accounts. And also a risk and safety application based on OSHA standards for risk management. Let's say you have something that goes on site and you had to have it reported within a certain amount of time. So that's really where I saw, and all throughout those apps, what I saw is once you develop them, it's nice to have a side app, like an admin app for Power Apps, where you can allow users to maintain the solution, right? For example, the timer app, I think, from what I know, is still running today since 2019. That's a good 6 years of building an application that works and that anyone can kind of come in with documentation and be able to maintain and keep going. So I've created some project management apps, etc. And really, my last Power Pages project involved implementing like Power BI row level security, embed with your customers to using Entra ID to kind of allow access to everything. So that's just a little bit about me, and I'm based out of Florida. So what I'll cover today is why would we use Power Apps? We have Power Pages management already. What are some key features of the applications? Process steps. I'll do kind of a live demo to show you what I've put together for this call today. And then if you have any questions and answer, please feel free to put those in the question and answer chat, and I'll go through those. So why use Power Apps? So I've found that there's a lot of, I'm sure as you Power Platform experts know, there's a lot of window switching sometimes between setting up a web role or setting up a user. If you're especially in my case, in the case I'll present today, we're using Entra, we're using internal guest user access, but we could also use this for external Entra tenant. So there's a lot of different points to kind of update, and that's one of the things that I think is nice about Power Apps is you can kind of centralize everything together and minimize, and also use logic to pass on variables, minimize the amount of work needed to do a certain task, enhance kind of reportability on those as well. And maybe you can have, let's say, you have a marketing team that needs to manage, or whatever team that needs to manage a certain websites. They're not pros in Power Pages or Power Platform. You can kind of build an interface for them to do this in a guided manner. So yeah, and then we can interact with multiple tables in the click of a button. Like I'll show you in a minute that we can create a user in Entra, a guest user in Entra, and at the same time, we can create that user in the Power Pages contact table to be able to kind of bring everything together in a single click. Some of the key features, so as I mentioned, user-friendly interface. You can really set logics. One of the things I love with Power Apps and Power Automate is you can send out automated notifications. With deep linking, you can set like parameters to have the app navigate to a specific record. when you click a link, and you can integrate with Dataverse, Power, all things Microsoft really here. Um, and I'll show you the flow for Power Automate to assign roles, to relate tables. But once you use Power, really the Power Apps, like the admin function, is you can kind of bring the full. I know I'm saying power a lot, but you can kind of bring the full Power FX functionality into the mix. So if you wanted to have an option to mass email users for an update on the site, whatever the scenario is, this could using Power Apps to manage users or communicate with users in a Power Pages website, I see would be useful. So I'll go on to the next slide. And here, actually, I think what I'll do is show a live demo. So I've got this Power Pages site, and I just embedded, just for simplicity. You could use just a form on Power Pages and have it go through directly to the Dataverse table. But for simplicity, I used the Office forms.office.com form. So I'll just type in, name Alex, let's say the Opti 17, and then an email address. And then this is where you can, and this is the scenario where the user, requests access with their credentials, whatever your data entry point is. It depends. You could have different scenarios where you mass upload information or where you create information directly. So we'll submit that form. And then once the form is submitted, that will run a Power Automate flow. And basically what that flow looks like is whenever a new response is submitted, we'll get the response details. Then we'll add a new row into a Dataverse table. And that table could be used for tracking for many different things as a reference table down the line. And then we'll send an email. And we'll send an email, and once again, this could be sent to a group email. Right now, I chose for simplicity myself, but you could send this to whatever business rules you would need to. And then the cool part about this here is we're linking to the application itself, and we're integrating the ID from the Dataverse table so that we have the information already. So let's say an admin user receives an email here, and I'll pull this on screen in a second. So our admin user receives an email, says a new user registration request has been received. All they have to do here is click a button, and they would access the application, the Power Apps application itself, with the user information. I'll do a quick refresh. So on this screen, we have our information that's already preloaded from our Dataverse table because we used deep linking, and I'll show you that a bit more in a minute. So you have the user first name, last name that I put in, you have the email address, and if you want to redirect, like right now this is an open text field, but this could be like a drop down, like of a list of pages when the user first accesses the site, you want to redirect them to, that's where you could input that. Then the one I've used so far is guest. I'll be completely honest with you, I haven't tried it with member, but for guest. So let me take a step back and let me show you what that looks like in Power Apps. So in Power Apps, to accomplish what I just saw, in the app property, the onStart property, you want to set a variable that if request ID, var request ID, whatever you want to call it, is equal to the ID of the information we saved in that Dataverse table. Then you want to go to the start screen and set the navigation rules. So I won't go too into details on this because I know we have, just a short amount of time. But basically, that's the navigation, the deep linking is done through onStart and start screen. So from there, so yeah, I wanted to show you the button actually for creating a new user. So why don't I just play the app here from the home screen, because we do have, like, the way I showed it, you can have a notification that brings you directly to the record, right? And then when you click that button, what that does is, let's create a new contact. I'll just click guest and exit out to show you kind of the formula here. So in this formula, we create the user and Entra. So you'll want to make sure you have the right permissions as the user for the application itself and the environment to do so. But basically, we're using a connector here that's Entra ID, identity, and access. And one thing that I've noted is when you add this as a data source in Power Apps, if you type in Entra ID, identity, and access, it doesn't pop up. You have to type in Azure ID, Azure AD, identity, and access. So that's kind of the connector that you want to look at. You could probably do an HTTP request, but that's the way I found to do it that works. So we'll grab the information from the Power Apps values for the first name, the last name to create the display name. Then we'll grab the email address to create that email address. And this is like the guest user creation in Entra itself. Then the user type from the radio button that we see down here. We'll grab that information as well. And the capitals matter here. And then the redirect URI, or URL, basically that's where the user will be sent to once they first click the button, the email. We'll grab that from this information right here. Reset redemption, I have it set to false, and send invitation message to false as well, because I don't want the default invitation message from Microsoft sent to them, because we're going to use Power Apps to send an invitation message that's customized down the line. Then once this is completed, we'll go ahead and create the user in the contacts table for Power Pages. So we'll same thing again here. We'll grab the first name, last name, email to create the base user record. And then one thing I like to do in Power Apps is, if I'm on the screen, I want to try to keep everything in the same screen. So I keep everything in containers. So we'll go to the second step here. So just to show you what this looks like, let's say we'll redirect this user to a page that I know is only accessible by authenticated users. All right, so we'll go ahead and go to step 2, add users and role permissions. All right, and here I'm going to switch and I'm going to check my mailbox. If I've done everything correctly, I should receive an email. to access the site. There it is. So I'll just share that email with you. So receive the email to well, actually, that was okay. Okay, I lied. That was an email from before because I just deleted that account earlier just to show the process. I'm skipping ahead, but from here we have the account, we have the user that's just created an Entra, and if we checked, I don't want to take too much time, but if we checked Power Pages Management, we have the user created there as well. So what we want to do here is we want to select a Power Pages site to assign the web role to. And this is basically connected in Power Pages to the website's Dataverse table, right? We're just grabbing the information from there with the website name. So I'm just going to choose this website, and then the web role is filters down on the web roles available for this specific website. So let's say I wanted to add authenticated user. And then here we have a rich text editor that right now is just hard coded to have information. Like, let's say I switch this to a different website, it would give you the website name. You can kind of do this like any way you want. If you want to be able to choose different templates for the communication, that's something you could refer to as well. And then we'll assign the user. You can kind of see that it changes over here. So, and then you can edit it like manually if you want to send it out. So once you're ready to send that out, we'll go ahead and click assign web role and notify user. And to show you what that looks like on the Power, so basically what that does is we'll call a Power Automate flow, which I have called Power Pages Admin App Update Web Role Flow. So we have our flow that just ran, and if we look at what the flow looks like, we're grabbing those values from Power Pages, so from Power Apps, sorry. So let me go to that button so I can show you what this looks like. Where is my button? There we go. This is the button. So basically in here, we're creating we have a flow and we're passing the values from Power Apps. So when we look at the flow itself, we pass the GUID for the web role specific to the site, the user row ID for the contacts table, the email address, the body of the rich text message, and the name of the website. So then we create a variable. This is somewhere that it could be improved on, right? If you have different organizations. So this is like a critical part, like we kind of like use the organization environment, then API data, whatever version. 9.1 is the one I've been using. I know there's probably an updated version now. And then MSPP web roles is the table we want to connect to assign that web role GUID that we obtained through Power Apps. Then we perform a relate row where we get the user row ID. We create that relationship with the MSPP contact web roles table, and we relate it with the web role GUID that we obtained from Power Apps from connecting to there. And then we send an email with the information from the app directly. So kind of the user is doing everything through the app. And now if I do check my email, this is the correct one that I received, where you receive an email that says, you've been assigned the role. Then you click to access the site. And if I signed in here, Actually, let me do that with a. So if I sign in with my new account, then it'll request me whatever, however you have it set up in Entra, right? Because you have to have a Entra application set up and a app registration set up. So whether it's send code or multi-factor authentication, that's the way you can kind of do it. But basically, on the end user admin side, someone who doesn't really have access to all of the knowledge or isn't like an expert in power pages, or like if you want to integrate all business rules, this is where I could see that this would be a useful tool for that. So to quickly go back to my presentation, yeah, so live demo. So again, just a recap. So Microsoft Entra ID, identity and access, that's the best way so far, easiest way, I'll say. But you want to make sure you do Azure AD, identity and access. That's a premium connector as well. My subscription, I have Power Automate Premium, and that seems to work just fine. Then we're patching the contacts table to just create the user in the contacts table. Then after that, we're running that flow to assign the web role to the user in the contacts table for that specific site. Then the Power Automated flow, that's the flow to relate the web role to the user itself. So that's kind of it. The idea of the application really is you can manage users in a quick format. You can maybe mass communicate with users. But as for today, that's what I had available to present. If you do have any questions, please let me know, and I'd be happy to answer those. And thank you.
Awesome. Great job. That's super interesting. I think that's a tool that a lot of people are going to end up doing something similar, because yeah, managing that process using the out of the box stuff is not very intuitive. So when you're kind of handing this system off to other people to manage something like that is a perfect fit for Canvas apps. Just the one question I see here is someone asking, what's the best approach to build a complex Canvas Power App that requires both mobile, tablet, and desktop/web versions? Is it to build a separate mobile and web version, or to build a single responsive app? Do you have any thoughts on that?
You're saying mobile, so it's like accessible through the Power Apps app on the phone. Because the end result is it would access the Power Pages site. So,
I think they're just
yeah,
saying in general, if you're building Canvas apps, and you want it to be both kind of for the smaller forms and then the like kind of larger devices, would you recommend building two separate apps, or building it so that it's kind of a single app can respond to the device size?
yeah, I think that's a question. Like, if you're gonna be using it on phone format, I would probably use the kind of the portrait. I think the display orientation, you have the portrait mode. I'm not
Okay.
going to
Yeah.
switch it now, but there is that function. So I think that's something you want to think of is how will the end user be building it. For myself, what I've seen is that, yeah, if you want both, if you want someone to be able to use in landscape and portrait, you might have to move things over, but I'm not going to say I'm 100% sure about that.
For sure. All right. Well, thank you so much, Alexandre. That was fantastic. I know a lot of people are going to get a lot of value out of seeing how you did things, and so really appreciate you taking some time to put that all together and sharing that with the group.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you for having me and listening to me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so I am going to take the. Actually, I'll just make Nikita. I'll just kind of bump right over to you. I'll say make Nikita presenter. So Our next presenter is Nikita Polyakov from Microsoft. He's going to be telling us all about user and data security, kind of a checklist. So, Nikita, thank you for joining us today. I can't remember if this is your first time on a community call or not, but we've done a few things together over the years. So, former MVP, now Power Pages expert on the PowerCat team at Microsoft. So, really appreciate you spending some time with us, and I will let you go ahead.
Certainly. Well, thank you for the warm welcome. It's a pleasure to be here and present a topic, and I wanted to share basically how to run a Power Pages security review, and what I'll do just for a second is actually talk about my process. So I'll drop the link. This link eventually will be a download, but right now it's actually a shortcut to my email. So this is how you'll get this process. So basically what happened is, first of all, who am I? Let's start there. So I happen to be, working at Microsoft for, 9 years now, and I spent 5 years in Fast Track for Dynamics 365, basically reviewing how our CRM customers were deploying their Dynamics 365 deployment to the cloud, and with that, seeing a lot of the portal work. And then I got I love working with Portal so much. I got to do that full time in the PowerCat team, and now I get to do the full Power Platform suite of products and work with some of my assigned customers, some of our top customers with Microsoft. And through my work here, what actually happened is through either my assigned work or others at Microsoft or escalations that needed help on projects, I've probably had an opportunity to review over 100 portals. It's probably a lot more than that in reality. And there's been, some things and some learnings. And right now, basically, I'm working with a team, and there's, not just me. There's colleagues that work with me, and I'm putting together a process of how do I do, a review if I was tasked with reviewing the process. And you don't have to be, a person that's, similar to Nick. I started my experience way before, with ADX Studios, and I was, implementing basically, Dynamics, which right now is basically Dataverse, and so I have a little bit more of a like web background. So kind of when we have projects that have issues or like performance or security concerns, I have the heavy foundation of just web development background that helps me really quickly kind of isolate, jump into problems, and just know the rocks to pick up, frankly. And that's what I wanted to relay to you. And this is why we built this. I've put together this process that we're going to be sharing publicly very soon. And when I work with my customers, I basically say, I don't want your code because it's not realistic for me to go review your code, install your solution, load up sample data, review something, and like you can probably burn a good amount of time just on that. I frankly ask the customers to just give me a demo, and then as we face your issues, and the top 3 issues are, hey, did we over customize this thing, or me and my implementation team, I have way too many developers. I thought this was low code. Why is there code everywhere? The other one is, hey, all of that, but also it's slow now, or it's terrible, or we went live and it's really slow. And the final one is security, right? We're not confident this is secure, or listen, our security team found some issues in this project. And a lot of times I'm coming in as the defense from Microsoft to just say, okay, like you guys make the product, come in and you unravel whatever was done here. Many times we, get in there and the implementation partner has left the customer already, or they're getting a new one, or for whatever reason, they don't really have anyone available to them. But a lot of times they do. And we ask them to say, listen, how about you show me the site? You show me what's wrong with it, because I will tell you, after reviewing over 100 sites, there are similarities in the use case at the high level, but once you get into the implementation details, everybody's experience is really going to be different. And because of that, I really asked the team to go sit down and show me what's happening, and then discuss what are your concerns and symptoms in that. Well, and then we do the tech deep dives, and then I kind of go along with my process, right? Now, I'm just sharing with you my template, and then, why would this be interesting to you? So first of all, if you're a person who's building a site, I want to show you today a security demo of what to review and make sure that you don't fall trapped to the same thing. But I also want to offer you my template of other things to review, because there's a lot more. And even to myself, I say, hey, customer team, let's focus on what are your top concerns, right? Because we can't just go review the end-to-end project every time. Let me just point you in the right direction. So what I have here is basically this template. You're going to get basically a copy of this if you contact me and use the download link. We go through everything here, from licensing and how licensing impacts cloud capacity, if they plan to do load testing, if did they have geographical requirements and things like that. We go through ALM, caching, customization. But what we're here to talk about, and what I want to share with you and demonstrate, which is going to be the most effective, is how will you perform a security review. So if you're on the project team, right, and we're going to give you the checklist to review and discuss with your organization about kind of like what you've built and what you're building or about to build. Or if you're somebody that's actually like in a governance role and you're reviewing security administration and configuration across your tenant, and you see pages, sites, and what you should do with them. So I have a little checklist here to review identity checklist, but many times especially if you're in that administrative role, you're probably are not as educated on Power Pages itself. So one of the tips that I have is actually please go ahead and take our Power Pages in the Day class, either attend the live one or go take the material itself. So the material is available at the AKMS/Power Pages in a Day. And that's going to give you to the Microsoft Learn content. So I'm pasting it to chat. I don't know if it's actually going anywhere. All right. So things that you need to review. And what I'm going to teach you is we're going to look at a site. There is actually a ton to review here related to security, right, in Power Pages, right? And I'm switching back here just for the speed of it. Because in Power Pages, right, it's different than Power App, because while we're going to focus on data and security, you do need to be aware that there's also web and infrastructure security, which is your web application firewalls. There's HTTP rules and content security policies. And while those are important, I would say they're not as critical as what you could kind of misconfigure on the right side, which is what identity options I have, how that leads into potentially how people sign in and register with my site, what web roles I have, what defaulting I have in the web roles, and what table permissions and page access it defaults in. Before that, I really want you to be aware that there's this important feature called site visibility. By default, every site starts in private. If you're managing a tenant, take that right away from makers to publish sites to public. Have them come to you. I will tell you that labeling and naming things is really hard. And I empathize with people who are product managers. You can have a public site that is 100% very important internal intranet site. Just think of public as the opposite of private. Don't think of public as public. Public just means that the URL opens. Private means there's an extra wrapper in Azure Active Directory, Entra ID, that keeps the project to the project team. That's why the sharing rights on the private site is maximum of 50. Then it's a very common funny question that I get is, hey, I'm building an HR site for a motor company or a large bank, and it's laughable that you guys don't let the site be shared with 50 people. And I say, where are you getting this from? And I figured it out. It's the private limitation here. Think of it as project mode. It's limited to sharing it with 50 people. If you have more than that, you're probably doing UAT testing. At that point, you should be setting your site to public in terms of that URL. But your identity choice, web page permissions and table permissions, have nothing to do with this toggle. It's just a project protection mode. So think of it on the left side, there's an extra wrapper around your entire site, even if you have pages or sites that are completely anonymous. And then on the right, I can access that site, and then it takes over with whatever that's configured. So, as you probably knew, if you hear looking at this thing, right, there's all of these layers to what's available in Power Pages. So review your network security and all of that. There is actually a feature for that. But today we're going to focus on this. Fundamentally, I also want to just explain, this is an overwhelming slide. You don't get to touch Dataverse API. while it might, whoever told you this or your perceptions are, I'm just going to clarify it. It is not possible to get there. You will be, if you have an API, you're using the Power Pages web API. If you've written Liquid code and you write fetch XML, or you use our native controls, right? So if you write our grid, form, subgrid, multi-step form, or use our new gallery control or anything else, using our click to configure controls, you're writing your own customization. You can Liquid data objects or writing fetch XML via Liquid, or writing your own little JSON driver with a Liquid page, generating your own JSON with some query parameters and getting really creative with that. Or you're using our web API, which we've had for a number of years available, that can do full CRUD. No matter how you do that, you cannot break out of the data Power Pages' data layer, right? And that's what's important, is that those security is run on behalf of the user at runtime, right? So you don't need to create a separate web role and table permission for the Power Pages web API. The Power Pages web API, because it's in the UI layer of Power Pages, is executed with the runtime rights of the user who's accessing it. Same thing with Liquid. If you write any fetch XML code, you cannot elevate your access. And likewise, you don't need to do security trimming here. You should be configuring the security in the web role and table permissions. Okay. So again, this might be a little ahead of itself, but it's an important point. So 4 things you really want to look for is, how do users sign in? What do they get to do right away? If any tables have global access, and web API. Now, you don't need to know what all these things mean. You should if you're developing a site, but if you're an admin, you probably don't know them yet. So I'm going to demonstrate to you how to look at a site configuration. And then what I do is, I ask the team on the project, I just verbalize what I see and say, does that make sense? And I'm going to give you a demo of what that looks like, and we'll focus on that, and I'll kind of come back to kind of like, how do we do this kind of a checklist and what it looks like. So let's go to our site. So first questions we ask is, hey, describe your business purpose of your site, right? So this site, this is actually the final result of somebody building Power Pages in a day. Lab, they'll end up with a website where somebody can come in. There's a set of machine orders. So there's a Power App that employees use to order a machine. There is a model-driven Power App to manage these orders, approve them. And then we've said, hey, listen, it's actually probably not efficient for us to go and export to Excel and manage the order processing with our suppliers. Let's build suppliers the self-service portal in Power Pages. So you'd step it up and actually extend that solution by adding a lookup to a supplier, which is a native table accounts table. And then, as you know, in Power Pages, the user becomes a contact. So what we want to end up with in this use case is, we invite suppliers, and as they sign in, they're associated with the supplier. So Nikita at Microsoft will supply specific machines that were assigned and made visible to me. And there was a specific set of columns that were made visible to me and editable to me through that experience. So that's the business use case. Okay, well, how do I review that, right? So we'll ask your team to sign in and demo that experience. So there's a tab here in the Maker experience. So you can find all of your sites, obviously, in Power Platform Admin Center. But let's sign in here and take a look. In this Pages workspace, you see the little lock icons. I can tell that this homepage is not protected. I can see in the permissions. So the first thing to discuss is, hey, this is a business-to-business supplier portal. Do I need anonymous pages, right? But this could be a long list for me to go and look for all the lock icons and ask. Right? So let's go to security and see a few things. Now, this little web application security, I will tell you that as bad as this looks, this is the out-of-the-box state. I know the engineering folks are working on it. Some of them might not make sense to be tweaked out of the box. We'll see. But the more pro dev you are, the more you might actually need some things unlocked, some things configured. But don't get too afraid of this. This is the default state. You can tighten it up, and there's actually a nice friendly UI for tightening it up. Just be careful. You can over tighten the security so much that you'll break it. Good news is you can just undo it. Now, there's web roles, page permissions, table permissions, web application firewall. We'll skip that one today, and identity providers. And then here's our site visibility. Now, here I'm reviewing a site that's already in production, and the team actually has some issues and security questions. So let's go take a look. But this is where the important toggle is. And you actually have governance to take the ability for the maker who runs and owns this site to be able to elevate it and only let like tenant admins or Power Platform admins go in and be able to switch the site's visibility. All of this is visible and possible to get through either this or to get through Power Platform admin APIs. So first discussion we probably need to do is identity providers, but let's even just look first at the page permissions. There's one thing that we really don't surface well in a Power Pages Studio, which is what I call just access mode. Do you have an access mode for the site that is, I have anonymous users and authenticated users? What those things mean is, do I have people who are just basically public? Do I have public pages or secure pages or both? And many times you'll have both. There is licensing implications, of course, and it is something to consider and discuss with your team, especially if you're in the administrative role and you're kind of going to be the one paying or charging them back, right? If you have a B2B site and you really don't have anything anonymous, you probably shouldn't have a homepage be public at all. So this is a good decision point to go ahead and actually configure that and reset that role. The other thing too is just go through and look through what the public pages are. All right, so we see that the contact us page, that makes sense. AZ map, I don't even know what that is, and order details. So this is where, like, I'll just role play. Like, as an administrator, you're like, wait, so like, why is an order details page public? I don't know what this AZ map is. Contact us page, that sounds somewhat reasonable. I don't remember seeing it even in the menu. So let's go back to pages. Again, you can do this in dev. Go find this page and kind of take a look at what's there and discuss. Now, this page comes out of the box in all of our templates. I recommend, and I know what happened is the team went in here and just said, move to other pages, right? Don't leave junk behind. If you're not going to use this page, delete it, right? What you don't want is when you actually publish the site, somebody to use web search, find the site, and assume that Contoso Coffee will get back to them because they filled out a contact us page. So it's just a bad look. Go ahead and delete this page. AZ map, well, I know we had some pro devs working on us, so this looks like some fun exercise that we're doing, but this is probably not a page we should just have hanging around. So definitely go to it and just maybe at least secure it. There's a nice administrator's web role. That web role is really for developers. So I'd say maybe let's just make this page only secure to those folks. Let's delete this page, and then order details page. Somebody made, I think, a configuration mistake there for it, because by default, if this was a child page of orders, right, it would have actually inherited the fact that this page had page permission. So somebody, I think, just misconfigured it. This is a quick fix. Now, page visibility is interesting. So let's go and actually browse it and find out like what is actually exposed here, right? So we'll look at that contact us page as well. Okay, well, good news, nothing, right? Because it says record you're looking for couldn't be found. It's actually a data error. So even if you could elevate your, kind of try to use this page, thankfully we have page permissions and table permissions, which protect data. And in fact, at governance level, there's actually a toggle that you can actually disable users who are not yet signed into the site to interact with any data at all. That is an extra layer of governance. You can say, hey, you know what, I'm going to let makers do whatever they want, publish their own sites, but I just don't want, I'm too afraid of what can somebody expose on a site. So this is the DLP setting for you for that. Just basically say, hey, you know what, all sites, just no data. What will happen then is you would still have the contact us page. Let's go navigate to that page. What will happen is you'll just have a data error on experiencing it. So you still see a page. It doesn't prevent your sites from not having pages, but it'll do that. So this is an important part. If you have the DLP here, the page will say there's a data error. Okay, so like I said, just talk through what you see on the screen with the project team and say, hey, these settings make sense, and then kind of create a punch list and tell them to go do the needful and then retest, and let's go revisit this experience. Okay. Well, then let's look at identity providers, right? So this is what happens on the sign-in page. Now, I've prettied up the sign-in page by giving them some more instructions, and there's out of the box two sides to this page. On the left is the username and password. This is called local sign-in. I've changed this labeling, and we'll from PowerCat team, we'll actually ship a label that has, we'll ship a site template somewhere in GitHub where we'll have actually all of these defaults pre-filled in. It's a very common ask, like, hey, how do I go configure this? It's going to require you some web searches and some blog posts to go find all these labels. We'll try to make that easier. We'll have a nice little PowerCat template that's got all these things configured. So there's the identity provider options for Power Pages, right? And this is how our users can sign in, register, or redeem invitation. So this is discussed with your team. Okay, well, do suppliers just sign up, right? So when they sign up, what happens is no matter the identity provider you choose, after you sign in, you become a contact. So let me just log in with Entra. And by the way, good news about Entra is, it's available out of the box, so all the users in your tenant can do it. This is fantastic for testing because, you as a project team can do this, and also you can assign it to the business stakeholders. And if you have B2B federation between your tenants and your suppliers, they're already actually technically in your tenant, and they can sign into experiences through your tenant. The other one is if you have guest users. So if you had a Teams channel, for example, shared with somebody externally, like your suppliers before, and used to exchange Excel files, they're already in your tenant. You can actually use and leverage that as your identity strategy. What we really recommend you doing, and this was this setting right here, and it's on by default and provisioned for you, is consider Entra External ID. The previous state here is the preview for the configuration. It's pretty much production ready for you to use for Power Pages. I would say probably for new projects, just go ahead and start with this. B2C eventually will see an end of life. I don't control the roadmap, so just like you, I'm watching their release notes and saying, hey, when do B2C customers need to move to Entra External ID? Is there parity gaps between them? All the classic fun stuff to consider. But if you got a SAML2 provider, an OpenID provider like Auth0 or Okta, we'll take that. Go ahead and configure that. But by default, because we have the setting for open registration, anybody who can sign into the site can sign up. So what's really important here is making sure that your identity options reflect the business purpose of your site. What I don't like about this option of local sign-in, why I recommend deactivating it. And by the way, in our admin center, you can absolutely review the security tab here, see the scan results, and see how many sites have local sign-in enabled, and go review them as well. So go ahead and actually review that. And what's my problem with it? Well, when I go to sign in and I go to register, we're shipping the CAPTCHA being out of the box. You can go and enable it on your site if you already begun your project through the site settings that are documented. But I can go and sign up as Bill Gates. Okay, well, that's not so bad, Nikita, right? What's the problem? Well, I'm not Bill Gates, clearly. But I'm now able to create an account pretending to be him. And many people assume that there is a setting for confirm email, right? Well, the thing is out of the box, this is actually a Microsoft workflow in Dataverse. So there's actually a bit of a problem here, because both this and if I do, there's a change password here and change email. But if I sign out and I forgot my password, this button doesn't actually work until you set up email exchange integration to this Dataverse, set up a mailbox, probably need an exchange admin to approve a mailbox. It's actually quite a few hoops for somebody to jump through. So if you stuck and already live on local, please make sure that these workflows actually work. They definitely don't out of the box. You do need to go ahead and configure them, because there's an email template you need to set up that makes it work. So my problem with this is we created this user, and we pretend that we're this user, and now I'm able to sign in. So one challenge here is that we didn't validate the email address. If you had used Entra ID and you had a guest account created as part of that enrollment, would have been email validation. If you used Entra External ID or B2C, by default, unless you turned it off, there's an email validation process that at least can prove that you stole that email address, because you might be using workflows and automation to go and actually go take that contact, and then let's say based on their email address or self-provided company information, map them to an account. And this is what we actually do, is we let people sign up in our business use case, and we'll go ahead and go there and then go map them to a supplier, right? But it's actually not what we want in this case. So when we go to supplier, thankfully, while somebody can pretend to be Bill Gates, they don't see any supplier information. But what about orders? When we go to orders, we got a problem. I didn't map this person to anybody, but I'm able to see data. In fact, this is actually what this team called us for. And so we'll wrap up here in a minute to figure out what's going on here. So I'll sign in with who I've intended to sign in, and also show you that even when I'm signed in and mapped to a supplier, right? So here's my supplier record. Here's my subgrid of supplier records. I'm only supposed to see 2 rows here. But when I go to my orders, this data is overexposed, right? So what's wrong? I went through my triage. I went and found my contact. I know that don't have any web roles assigned. And the place that defines data access, is web roles again and table permissions. So let's look at our web roles. While you can see the list here, it is actually managed at in portal management or Power Pages management. So let's go ahead and look at the list of web roles on this site. And you can have more than one site in an environment. Okay, so we have anonymous, authenticated, and the supplier supervisor. Let's take a look at that. Nothing seems to be off, right? Okay, it's just some web roles, and I don't see any context associated with this record. So I don't know how people are getting this. If that's what's happening. Let's go look at table permissions. And in table permissions view, what I really want to always focus on is the table name and the access type, right? Every time I see global, that means full table access. So I already see that supplier supervisor gets full access to accounts, and I've verbalized that to the team. Does that sound like it meets your business requirements? Look, people can update all accounts. Okay, let's group this by role. So we have anonymous. Looks like there's some address table, web API. I don't know why they called it web API. And I just asked them because sometimes developers leave things behind. In fact, when I review sites, the sites with pro devs usually have more problems than sites that don't, and because devs just try to do a little bit more and be a little extra. So I would ask the team to define and figure out why that's happening. Authenticated, that's our out-of-the-box role. So we see things are good here. We still got this address thing. I don't know what it's used for. We don't even have addresses surfaced. Maybe that's some phase 2 thing that somehow got into this release. We should probably back out and deactivate it. This is a quick way to test. Feedback is that contact us page. And orders here, we see other account access. So take Power Pages in a day, AKMS Power Pages in a day. You'll learn how to do row level security using table permissions in Power Pages the right way. Looks like this is configured correctly. So I don't have that problem, but supplier supervisor, this is the place where you do see all orders, right? Then you have full CRUD. How are people getting this? And this one is, so this is how you're able to track saying, hey, somehow this web role is getting assigned to my contact. We've reviewed it. So the actual mistake here is a very, I wouldn't say a common one, but an easy one to make. There's a yes flag here. And what this checkbox does, it says, take this web role and make it the default web role for anybody who signs in. And not only, it doesn't associate it, it actually makes it automatic at runtime. That's why it's not visible in the contact record. And you don't have automation, to prove that, like, hey, why are people doing this? So the moment you fix this, right? So you really should have anonymous, which should be maybe renamed to public. Authenticated, I recommend that to be supplier baseline, for example, be contextual to what you're doing, right? So as soon as I sign in, I have the supplier base role, and then I don't want to have any defaulting. So I only should have one of each, one anonymous default web role for my public users, and one default for everybody who signs in. And this is the web role that's going to define the web pages that are available out of the box and available to me. So that's why it's so important. The very final thing to check when we're almost out of time is also to check if this site potentially has any web APIs enabled. So I know we already fixed this. So hit the preview button to hit the configuration. Now when we'll be on the site, we'll see just the right data. But there's also, we know we had some pro devs and we had some web API. So if you look for the site settings on that site, we have account enabled for web API. So I hope there's some cool code and automation created here, but and that's okay. What I don't like is the fact that there's star. So we definitely would have had a problem with the configuration as is when it was misconfigured, because anybody pretending to be anybody could sign in. They had default web roles over committed, and they were exposing data. And because the developer just didn't decide what columns they wanted to show, this should be strict listing the columns. When I go open that web API, I'm seeing more fields than I should. Well, the native experience, I chose the columns and the fields. I chose the fields that are editable and read-only. If I had this misconfigured, like was presented here, I would actually be able to overexpose and go override these fields with web API. So I should have definitely went in here and for the machine order fields, be specific of which fields you wanted to add, which was the date and the order ID. So that's the checklist. I know this was just a quick demo. We will share again with the list of those recommendations. So you can get this deck, just go to the site, and I'll turn to questions, but we can pause the recording and get into the Q&A over time. So thank you, and I hope you'll be able to use the PowerCat Power Pages Solution Review template on your projects. Please let me know your feedback, and hopefully this was educational for you how to review it. Again, all the information is here in the Power Pages Studio. Just read it, talk with the team about what's configured, and just make sure that you don't have any surprises here. Again, we talked about the address, right? You don't need a Web API table permission. There should be an organic one, maybe a child of an order, right? And shouldn't be showing all of the addresses. Especially here, we look, it's actually giving somebody full CRUD. So anonymously, if there was a Web API enabled on that addresses table, this probably would have been pretty bad. So we should definitely go and address it, fix this, and resolve that situation. All right. Well, I'll turn
Awesome.
to our hosts and have us wrap up for the day.
All right, so I'm not seeing any questions in the question block for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch over to myself quickly. Go to there. So thank you, Nikita. Always great stuff from you. That security stuff is unfortunately there's some horror stories out there if you're not doing it properly. So thank you for sharing kind of your best advice and guidance on what to look for. Those are definitely that the web API and the global permissions. Those are certainly on the very high on the list of things that people need to keep an eye out. And you just gotta keep an eye out for the things that the developers accidentally left there that they didn't mean to. So thank you for that. Our next call will be May 15th. Still thinking about which topic to do. So if you have any input on, if anyone has any input on what topics they'd like to see covered, please just shoot me a message. I'm always happy to take requests on that. And I think that's it for today. So I'm going to end the recording. Thanks everyone for attending today. Thank you to both Alexandre and Nikita for their presentations today, and hope to see you all next month.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thanks all. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.